On today's show, we have Grant Schiller, the OG Shill, here to talk about our debutant draft results from before the season and talk about who the Rangers left open for the Rule 5 draft. And of course, it wouldn't be Grant Schiller out here if we weren't talking about some Vandy boys. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Joining me today is the long-standing guest, the prospect prince, the king of knowing things about baseball, my friend Grant Schiller. How you doing today, my friend?
I am doing great. I appreciate those titles. They're extremely generous. I don't know many people who get to be a prince and a king at the same time, so I live in the high life.
You really are, just like the Rangers in their pitching development this year. Before we get into today's topics, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, I talked about it on Tuesday's show. The deadline has come and gone for the Rangers to protect men on their 40-man roster, and they made some curious decisions. It made me look a little silly. My 3 locks were actually picked of the 3 guys who they chose to protect on their 40-man roster in Winston Santos, Emiliano Teodo, and Maximo Acosta. The Rangers lost Carson Coleman because, he was their Rule 5 pick who did not play at all, injured the entire season. So alas, he's shipped back to the Yankees. So there was a 40-man spot open, left unclaimed at this point as of the recording, 6:37 p.m. on Wednesday night. Excuse me, 6:38. It just turned as I was reading that. And I was a little surprised by their decision to leave that 40-man roster spot open, especially with some of the guys that they left unprotected. What about you, Grant?
Yeah, I tend to think that they have it earmarked for Juan Soto. I just think you got to keep the room available. And maybe you can DFA, I don't know, Roansy Contreras for Roki Sasaki, and then a Sam Huff for Blake Snell. So there's some space available. Once you get those 3 on board, I think it starts to tighten up real quick.
Yeah, I think I'd be okay with that if that was the decision that they made. But I was noticing a trend with this, another Rule 5 draft eligible guy that went undrafted last year. Another hard-throwing lefty. The one left off this year of the 40-man roster is Brian Magdaleno. We talked about him on Tuesday's show. A guy who is a left-handed pitcher who gets a lot of strikeouts, throws as hard as 98. He's also got a slider. There's just not a whole lot of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Are you worried he'll get drafted?
I am. I mean, I think you can look at it and you can kind of pick it apart and say that, yeah, the control's probably not big league ready. And you probably can't live with the fastball end zone quite so much against the big leaguers, even with a 96 to 98 mile an hour pretty live one from the left side. So I think you could pick it apart and find where I don't think he's going to stick on a big league roster for the full year. But at the same time, the Rangers have had such a hard time getting electric stuff out of their bullpen for so long from either side, especially from the left. I was surprised they didn't protect him. I think that's probably something that you just want to play it better safe than sorry, especially given, like you said, there's some spots to be opened up on this 40-man. You can probably count 7 or 8 of them that aren't going to give you a whole lot of heartburn. And I mean, we just saw a year ago where, or really 2 straight years, where valuable pitchers have gone out of the organization because they weren't protected. Both of them straight out of AA, right? So you had Mason Englert to the Tigers 2 years back, who I still think has a chance to be an 18-out kind of guy. It isn't necessarily doomed to a bullpen role for forever. And you had Justin Sladen a year ago, who ended up being one of the Red Sox better relievers and who the Rangers really could have used. Now, I know last year when they didn't protect Slade and they didn't protect Antoine Kelly, who I think you're kind of referring to with the hard throwing lefty who they didn't protect. Both Kelly and Sladen had some makeup concerns, so maybe you point to that. But for a team that's lacked pitching depth and lacked kind of the upper end bullpen stuff, it's tough to keep leaving those guys unprotected and maybe lose another one here. So I don't necessarily think he would be able to sit on a big league roster for the full year, given where his control command's at right now. But I don't think I would have taken that chance either.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would have either. Yeah, I was referencing Antoine Kelly, who did not have a good year. So maybe maybe they knew something that we didn't. I mean, I feel confident saying there's quite a few things that Chris Young knows about baseball that at least I don't know. But this is now 4 hard throwing lefty in the last couple years who the Rangers have left and parted ways with. I mean, Brock Burke was another one who the Rangers just straight up DFA'd when they had plenty of other 40-man spots that they could have, gone a different way with. I mean, Burke had, this is the first hint of any makeup concern. It was just him punching a wall. That was just a dumb thing that plenty of baseball players doesn't make him a bad guy or a bad clubhouse guy, but they were real pissed about that. And I just found it ironic that the day that they cut him was literally right after he touched 100 miles an hour for the first time. And then you had Cole Reagans, who, not that they just shipped him away. Obviously, that was an overpay at a time where the Rangers just desperately needed a bullpen arm, and they had to overpay to go get it. Now, I wish Cole Reagans could have been that live bullpen arm, but alas, that's not how things worked out. Flags fly forever. So eventually I might stop whining about it. Probably not.
Got that thing right there behind your right shoulder that helps.
I do. I also have this here. It's sitting. It's pretty nice. I do like it, even if at the cost of a Cole Reagans. But I don't know. Does Chris Young get the ick when lefties start to throw more than 93 miles an hour? Is that why Cody Bradford's sticking around? Is that why Mitch Bratt his future is looking assured with the Rangers?
I think that might be it. I think you just tend to. I think it might be the jealousy coming out. Chris Young, former pitcher, big right-hander through 90, 91. He's probably looking like you can't be left-handed and throw harder than me. No way. Ain't having that. So.
Forgetting that he only threw 90, 91. You remember, I mean, every single pitcher that's like 6'5", if he throws in like the low 90s, the scouting report, no matter how big they are, it's always like there's more velocity in there. And 6'10" is like, oh yeah, there's definitely more velocity. I mean, look at Randy Johnson. He was 6'10", and he threw 98. Chris Young, why were you only throwing 91? Come on, man.
Yeah. He released the ball halfway to the plate, though, so it played up. It helped.
Oh, so he was basically right-handed, a little bit taller. Cody Bradford is what you're saying?
Essentially.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, Cody Bradford had a phenomenal season. I mean, just overall, actually, like one season where I know you've been doing this for a long time. I've been covering Rangers prospects for a long time. I don't think either of us have ever could use the word giddy to describe how he felt about Rangers pitching prospects, plural, in a season. And there's like 5 of them that I'd say I feel pretty giddy about after this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the best group of pitching prospects since you probably go Feliz, Holland, Harrison were all in a similar time frame. You traded for 2 of those and brought them in. But you probably go all the way back to DVD days, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, wow. Can you explain for the youngsters who don't know what a DVD is, let alone the DVD trio?
So the DVD trio was, I guess it's early 2000s when the Rangers were just a few years removed from the division titles, and they would lose a lot of games 10-9. They had 3 great pitching prospects, and John Danks, Edison Volquez, and Thomas Diamond, who are going to be the next big things. Huge pitching prospects, kind of agreed upon kind of around the country, not just Rangers fans. And sadly, none of those really worked out for the Rangers. Volquez ended up being traded for Josh Hamilton, which certainly did work out for the Rangers.
Yeah, that worked out okay.
Thomas Diamond, great guy. Ended up with Tommy John back before it was a cinch for you to return back to your normal self. And ended up just kind of moonlighting for the Cubs and maybe the Twins for a couple years. And John Danks obviously had a long career with the White Sox, but was shipped off before he was very impactful for the Rangers themselves.
Yeah, now we are in the Blu-ray era. Things are different. The streaming era, with a couple of Vandy Boy. There's no connection here. I was trying to find some clever way to say it. Coming up, we're going to talk about the new wave of Rangers pitching prospects, including a couple of Vandy Boys and one pitching prospect who just really blew my socks off this year. All that and more right after this. The show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the best place to get your tickets for all the live events you're looking to go to, whether it's sports, whether it's comedy, whether it's music, theater, no matter what it is, Gametime is the best place to get those tickets, and Gametime Picks makes it even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. They've got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% the difference. They've also got panoramic seat views from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what it's going to look like when you get there. So take guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Now we are here with Grant Schiller, the OG Shill, prospect writer for Baseball Prospectus. Baseball Prospectus just a week and a half ago unleashed, unveiled on whatever. I'm trying to do words, and I've already tripped over myself. But your top 20 Rangers prospect list, and I want to start with a couple of guys that we've talked, I think, more than anybody in our many shows together about. That's, of course, Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter. Let's start with the funner one. I'll let you figure out who that might be.
Yeah, so Jack Leiter. It was a
oh, Jack.
No, so Kumar Rocker, I mean, it's impressive, man. I mean, he was, I think, 13th on our list last year, and really it was kind of name value that kept him up as high as he was, because the stuff had lagged pre-injury. The mechanics were real concerning, to put it lightly. He had the elbow injury, Tommy John. There was pretty real risk of it going back up into the shoulder in time, and like that risk still is outstanding, right? But especially looking
I
at
think
how
the risk is
mechanics
actually bad, not outstanding. That's just me.
That's a good point. That's a real good point. But especially with the mechanics he sported back then, it was severely heightened risk. That, I mean, often at first it gets the elbow, then it gets the shoulder, right? So pretty concerned about the health. Stuff had lagged, wasn't on the mound. 13th on the list, kind of off everyone's radar, nowhere near the top 100. All of a sudden, he's going to be top 50 for us. He's number 2 on the Rangers list, and there's a real case to be made for him to be number 1. I think it says more about the belief in Walcott than the disbelief in Rocker. I think if you're picking them apart, you can still point to, the changeup really could use improvement to be reliable third pitch, or even just his trust and faith in the pitch to use it more often. Because you saw in the last couple starts kind of the flaw that has long had people kind of project him as a reliever.
Sorry, the last few starts, where was it? I just want to qualify where the Rangers got a first round pitcher to be. What level was he pitching at?
That'd be the major leagues.
Okay, cool.
Where after his curveball, not a slider, his curveball tore through the Mariners, the next couple teams just decided they weren't going to swing at it. So they would take it normally for balls just below the zone, because he likes to try and get chase with it, and then sit on the fastball, which the 4-seamer, which is the other thing you can kind of pick apart, which it's nice when you can pick apart a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, but that's a good base. But it doesn't have great qualities, right? It's if it's not in the dead zone, it's very close to it. So it's not going to play quite to its velocity. So you look at it, you can say, yeah, you might have a reliever there with a great breaking ball, a good fastball.
So question for the lay people: what do you mean by the dead zone? I mean, I know what you mean,
Yes.
obviously. But.
So the dead zone refers to basically the movement profile you want to avoid, the absolute average movement profile that hitters' eyes are going to expect when they see the ball come out of your hand. So you have your fastballs, you have your sinkers, or your two-seamers that are going to run or sink more than you expect out of the hand. You have your very live four-seamers like Leiters, where the ball seems to rise, where it goes kind of above where you'd expect it to go. It doesn't drop according to what gravity would normally have it at because of the spin and the vertical break you're putting on it. The dead zone basically is it's moving exactly like you would expect it to. So the hitter picks up the fastball, and he has a pretty good idea of where it's going, so he can get a better grasp on kind of catching up to it than he could for Leiters, where he needs to adjust his bat path one or two balls above what he would actually visibly see. So what that leads to basically is the fastball doesn't play quite to the velocity. It's hit more like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball than a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, which still isn't bad. Like you see, Hunter Green has a dead zone fastball. That pitch still plays well because he throws it super hard. So it's still a good fastball. It's just not as elite as the velocity would indicate. So you can point at those things and say, yeah, he might still be a reliever. I think more likely you point at he's got a history of throwing strikes. He's got one of the better curveballs in all of baseball. He's got, I think the sinker's a significantly better fastball than the four-seamer, and I hope he features it more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got the makings of a changeup in there.
And allegedly a cutter. I'm still waiting to see that. I'm surprised we didn't see it in like at least the third start. Of like you need something else there.
Yes, and he's going to need to trust the third pitch and use it. I think he'll get there. Once he does, I think you've got a pretty good chance at looking at a big league number 2 in a rotation with significant further right tail upside. So
I'm sorry. What is that? Was that further upside? I just need to hear you say the words.
I think it might be impossible to say that about a Rangers pitching prospect. I don't know that I can make the words come out of my mouth.
That's fair. The cops might be on the way if you actually said it. Just I'm hearing a helicopter literally flying over my apartment as that happened. Someone please don't call the authority. I didn't say it out loud. All right. Maybe I thought it. You can't even tell if I thought it. There's no proof.
I'm glad I shut my mouth. I think saying number 2 starter out loud is pushing it enough. The bar normally is mid rotation.
The bar is not even the bar is number 8 starter. That's
the bar is projecting mid rotation, and then suddenly they lose their breaking ball and they become a quad A guy.
Oh yeah, no, this guy is the safest pitching prospect, and there he goes. There he goes.
So we just need to keep Rocker out of the graveyard of Chichi Gonzalez and Owen White sliders.
Well, he wasn't named Rangers pitching prospect of the year, so I think he's fine. Was it Rosario that got that? Was it Cole Drake? I think it was Drake that won the award as the sacrificial lamb, because that's just how that works. Some kind you throw the name Nolan Ryan out. It's like nope. Oh, a Nolan Ryan award. I think we should just rename it. Just like you did a pretty good job of pitching award. Not to put too much pressure. Maybe take his name off of it, and maybe the curse will go away. Is that? Am I making things up there, or does that seem like sound logic to you?
I say keep the curse as a sacrifice, but give it to a pending free agent. So like this year, give it to Tim Brennan. He's about to be gone, right? So,
ooh, what if they give it to an Astros player?
I like that. Maybe that's what they did with Forrest Whitley. Poor guy.
Maybe that's what explains it. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. same with I mean, just absolutely out of nowhere. Coming up, we're going to talk maybe a little bit about Jack Leiter, but we're going to circle back to our debutant draft before the season. Grant and I each picked guys we thought were going to have make their major league debut this year and do very well. And maybe it was decided by the first pick, but maybe it wasn't. We'll break down exactly how it went down right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Make every moment more and never waste a hunch with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now we are here with Grant Schiller breaking down the results. I know you've been on your toes, just waiting to find out what these results were that maybe if you went back and listened to our preseason episode, actually, I think it was opening day. I'm pretty sure because this is an ancient tradition that Grant and I have spanning back all of 2 whole years. Grant was the winner of the 2023 Debutant draft. Now, the rules are we go by Baseball Reference War. We each picked, I believe, 4 different players. Snake draft to not make it, too difficult. Grant got real tricky and almost lost in 2023. Almost got himself out by picking Mason Englert, who technically was still in the Rangers system, but was a Rule 5 draft by the Tigers. He ended up skating by the skin of his teeth. A guy who didn't make his debut until September. The praise hands, Evan Carter, won you that. And you went first that year. This year I went first, and it was a really difficult choice as to who I wanted to pick with my first overall pick. The rules are they cannot have made their MLB debut before this. They had to be in the Rangers system. So Rule 5 picks still counted. Why did we not use that this year? That Justin Slayton,
because I thought he stunk.
That's what it was.
I thought he stunk.
Wow. The trust in CY was heavy after winning a ring. Man, we were still high on that reigning World Series champ. Was still riding the highs of seeing those gold uniforms and thinking, no, this is going to be the first team to repeat since the 2000 Yankees. Nope, that was not the case. My first pick, I had Wyatt Langford at 3.9 Baseball Reference War. Grant went next, and he picked Jack Leiter, who made his debut with a whopping -1.6 Baseball Reference War. He followed it up with a solid pick, another former first-round pick, Justin Foscue, who made his debut -0.7 Baseball Reference War in, I believe it was 18 games. It
was impressive how much he racked up.
Excuse me, not even 18. 15 games, 44 plate appearances, 2 for 42, 1 double, 18 strikeouts, 2 walks. Did get that extra base hit and an RBI in there before
Walk
that.
Off.
And before that oblique set in, and it was all downhill from there. I then made my next pick, March Church, who made his debut, 0.0 Baseball Reference War, a solid shutout inning in the final game of the season. Very nice there. Followed up with Antoine Kelly, who I was sure was going to play a part in this bullpen. Nope. Did not happen. We go back to Grant Schiller with the Rangers Rule 5 pick, Carson Coleman. Sat on the IL for the entirety of the season. Actually, I believe he did he even pitch in a minor league game this year? I know he got hurt when trying to rehab. Was it just in a bullpen, I'm guessing?
Yeah, he never made it to a minor league game. The hope was that he'd be back in mid-season. Then he had to go back, I guess, for another surgery. He's now not expected to be back until the end of 2025.
Jeez, that is a rough stretch for a guy who I had some hope for. Another guy who was supposed to miss a decent chunk of this season, ended up missing the entirety of it, was Jose Corniel. Did not make his debut. I did go back and listen to a little bit of it, and you said, I don't think he's going to make his debut, but sometimes it's addition by subtraction, and not getting a negative is, well, those two were your best picks. We bounced back to me. My final pick, Emiliano Teodo, did not make his debut. We added up the total we have Bryce with 3.9 baseball reference for, and the 0.0001 or whatever that Mark Church had still sits 3.9. And Grant at negative 2.3 baseball reference for, an absolute nail biter. But I take the cake with that first pick. I kind of felt like that was exactly what was going to happen. And you know what? It did. But I was very gracious to let you go first the first year. And now you'll be going first again this year. And well, I don't
There's
think either of us.
nobody.
There's there's the- yeah. It's gonna be tough out there. We might have another negative year. Maybe one of us is gonna go Brian Magdaleno if he gets drafted in 05. Or even if he doesn't, like that might. There were a lot of debuts this year, though, and a lot of
There were.
negative wars. I mean, a lot of first rounders making debuts. I mean, Cole Winn making his debut, Davis Wenzel, supplemental first round pick making his debut, Justin Foscue. We already talked about how that debut went, and two guys who had some firsts on the last day of the season. Dustin Harris made his debut on game 161 and then got his first hit, his first extra base hit, a home run, 3 RBI day on his final day of the season. Then Mark Church in there. That was a lot of fun. And then also Jack Leiter's debut, which was so weird. One of the weirder one of the weirder games of the season, and one of the weirder debuts I think we've seen. And then Rocker, that
off the table.
That was, he's off the table with those 3 starts. And that was, we also had Daniel Robert, who made his debut at 29. So I don't think either of us were really considering Daniel Robert. Hey, Daniel Robert, if either one of us picked him, would have been the second best at 0.1 WAR. In 4 games, 0.1 WAR. That would have blown away 7 of the 8 picks in this draft.
What I'm hearing is next year we might want to specifically pick players who won't debut. I'm going to take nothing but Dominican Summer League players and try and win with the 0.0.
I might go Sebastian Walcott with my first. That'd be crazy. But maybe just crazy enough to work. I mean, did Ornelas debut in 23? I feel like he did. Okay.
He did.
So he was off the table anyway. I did not see a Dustin Harris debut coming. I did not see a Sandro Fabian debut coming. Dustin Harris 0.2 WAR. That would have blown away. Sandro Fabian negative 0.1 WAR. So that would have saved you a little bit. This was it's a weird year. Before we get into my random Ranger, something we haven't done in quite some time, I want to ask you if there's one guy who we haven't talked about here who really impressed you seeing him in Frisco this year.
It's a good question. It wasn't the best group, right? Abimelec Ortiz had a tough start to the year, although it was kind of tough to get my finger on him because he looked fine. He still was making fine swing decisions. It felt like he was hitting a lot of choppers, but if you looked at the batted ball profile, it wasn't too far off what he had in the past. He just wasn't hitting, and he wasn't hitting for power. And then he finally got it going towards the back half of the year. You talked a little bit about Maximo Acosta. Zavala didn't really bounce back. I think you'd probably end up looking at the pitchers, right? So you've got a couple guys that we had at BP in our top 8. In Teodo and Santos, or actually top 7, who I think have real chances to, if they can throw more strikes and maybe expand their attack profile, fit into the back of a rotation, but more likely really fill into a really strong back of the bullpen for the Rangers, and give them the kind of electric stuff back there that you see a lot of other contenders be able to produce from the minor league system. So if they're able to start doing that and they're able to do it with consistency, that's a real step forward. And I think those two, maybe even more than some of the other Rocker and Rosario, who are going to be top 100, are potentially more indicative of steps forward in their actual pitching development program. Just in the steps forward they're able to take with their breaking balls, which they already had the fastballs, but the breaking balls got way, way better in 2024.
Man, that's so nice to be able to say. Yeah, the Rangers actually improved pitching prospects. Like that's not a sentence we've said a whole lot here. in our many shows together. But something we have done a lot is a random ranger. We will be picking the most random ranger that we can find. Grant, I don't know if you have one on lock. I have one that kind of fits what we talked about in our first segment. If you would like me to go first, I would be happy to do so.
Go for it.
Oh, I was like waiting for the go ahead. Yeah, this is a hard throwing lefty that I had high hopes for. A guy who the Rangers drafted back in the 33rd round of the 2015 draft out of Spartanburg Methodist College in Spartanburg, South Carolina. 6'6", 238 pounds. Pitched just 10 games in the big leagues, all for the 2018 Rangers, a low-key, very weird team. Do you know this random Ranger?
I know him. Is it CD Pelham?
It sure is.
All right.
CD Pelham. Didn't pitch anywhere else in the big leagues ever again.
I think he's still bouncing around.
He's wearing a Cubs hat in his baseball reference photo. He's still not even turning. He doesn't turn 30 until February 21st. So I don't know. Maybe there's a chance he gets back. If you're a lefty and you throw 100, someone will take a chance on you.
Yeah, he pitched with the Angels AA team this year, so he was back in the Texas League.
Okay. Grant, who is your random ranger before we head out of here?
I'm
I'm
also staying on theme. We're going Rule 5 pick for the Rangers. He only pitched in the big leagues in his Rule 5 season for the 2011 Rangers, in which he did not make it very far. He pitched in 4 games, 5 1/3 innings. In that time, he walked 5 and he struck out none. So you can kind of see why he didn't make it very far on a contending team. Relief pitcher. I believe he was selected from the I believe it was the Chicago Cubs who selected him from the Angels in the Rule 5 draft, and the Rangers purchased him for probably a few thousand. And they actually brought him back in 2015 as a minor league free agent, but he never saw the majors again. Do you know who this right-handed reliever is?
I actually don't. Who is this right-handed reliever?
This would be one Mason Tobin.
Mason Tobin. Wow, that is a name. My goodness. That is an incredible name. And also looking at the 2021 Rangers gave me an idea for my next random Ranger. Like that was low-key a really like 2018, 2021. Now we're like just far enough removed from we're like, there is some pretty darn good random Rangers on here. And if we're looking on 2021, there's also at least 1 or 2 World Series champion Rangers on there. But Grant, thank you so much for joining me, bringing your wisdom. Y'all go check out Baseball Prospectus. Go hit that subscribe. Very, very worth the subscription. Lots of smart people writing. Grant is included among those smart people writing about Rangers prospect. There is no one better. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.